Ladies and gentlemen, you're all very welcome. Obviously, very special welcome to our Director, Professor Frank O'Mara, to the Minister for Agriculture, who will join us in a moment. And I would like to acknowledge the presence of Brendan Gleeson, the Secretary General of the Department of Agriculture. It is so important that you are here today. Today is a day for our farmers, particularly for our beef farmers. And I just want to say that we're absolutely delighted that so many of you turned out in strength. It was obviously the weather certainly obliged, but it has been a really great day for us in Teagasc, and it is so important that the Minister for Agriculture is with us today to welcome you all, and obviously to say a few words on behalf of the government, and particularly with a focus on beef farming. And just to let you know that at the end of the Minister's address, he has kindly facilitated just a short number of questions and answers, because he must get back to Dublin for a Dáil vote later today. So with that, I would like to ask you to put your hands together and say a very warm welcome to Minister McConalogue, Minister for Agriculture, please.
Yeah, thanks very much, Liam, and great to be with you all. And just wanted at the outset thank Frank O'Mara and yourself, Liam, as chairman, and all the team here at Grange for putting on what is a phenomenal day and really interesting day. And I want to particularly acknowledge the work that's gone into organising today by Paul Crossan, Pierce Kelly and Margaret O'Donovan, who I know put massive work in, as we'll all appreciate, given how it's all structured here. Everything that's involved, the preparation that goes into it is massive, and I want to recognise them, but all of the team in Teagasc and particularly at Grange here for the massive work. And also thanks to all of you for coming, and thanks to so many farmers from right across the country, and indeed so many of our agencies as well. I know we've from ICBF, Animal Health Ireland, Board BEA, very much represented here. I want to acknowledge the sponsors, FPD as well. And many of our farm representative organisations. I know I saw Francie Gorman there earlier from IFA, and Hugh Farrell from ICSA as well. Great to see all of you here today, and also want to acknowledge my Secretary General as well, Brendan Gleeson, and other members of my own team who are here too. And I know this day is always a really important event in the calendar, happening once every 2 years. And I know it's really valued by farmers in terms of the opportunity that it provides to meet others who are equally as interested in the beef production sector. And I think we'll all have been very much impressed as well by the wide variety of stands, villages and live displays, and indeed the demonstrations that have been on view throughout today too. And I think it has really added to that we're so fortunate to have such a wonderful day, and the nice balmy weather as well, that actually makes the day even more pleasant and makes it so easy to be here and so easy to take on board the different information and learn from the different stands that are available. And also wanted to particularly acknowledge as well, I see the anaerobic digestion facility here as well that's on the farm, and I know many of you will be interested in viewing that too, because of the potential that's there for that to contribute to the sector. And as you'll know, recently we launched the biomethane strategy, the national biomethane strategy, to step out and achieve our target by the end of this decade, whereby 10% of our total annual gas usage in the country can be produced on farm through biomethane production, and the great potential that's there in relation to that. And indeed we've put a €40 million fund as well in place in relation to support the rollout of that and the initial scaling up of a number of those plants. And I want to recognise too the contribution of Teagasc to that, and the research that they're doing in anaerobic digestion, and the important role that research is going to play as we step out the growth of the industry between now and 2030. And listen, just being here today, obviously it's all about beef, and it's a sector that's very close to my own heart. Office of the Agri food regulator, and that's really unprecedented change and legislation, with the objective of making sure that we have transparency in the supply chain, but with a particular objective of trying to make sure that farmers are getting fair play for the hard work that goes in to production. And obviously, as an exporting nation, where 90% of the food, and particularly 90% of the beef that we produce, is exported abroad, and therefore very dependent on the prices that are available in international marketplaces, we, though, as a government, wanted to make sure that there was systems in place to make sure that there was clear line of sight for farmers in relation to what was happening and how the price that's available at the farm gate translates and relates to the prices that are available in the markets the many markets we're selling into. So we're very proud to have established that office, and indeed with former IFA chairman Joe Healy as the chair of the Agri-Food Regulator and the new CEO Maeve Dineen, actually a county woman here of County Meath, doing really sterling work there in terms of establishing the office. So that's one prong in relation to the work that I'm doing as Minister and that the government are doing in relation to supporting the sector. The other really important aspect, of course, though, is the supports that we're putting in place in relation to the various schemes that are there to support and underpin family farm incomes, and indeed to support the growth and the profitability of the sector into the future too. And in that regard, last year in particular, we were glad to roll out the new Suckler Carbon Sea Efficiency Programme with a budget of €256 million over the next 5 years to support beef farmers and to support the suckler cow herd and sector as well grow. And we've had 16,000 farmers who have applied for that and are benefiting from that, from the new SCEP scheme. And I want to recognise as well the important work that ICBF, and I see Michael Doran, the chairman here today, are doing in relation to underpinning that scheme as well. And of course, one of the commitments I made before becoming Minister was that if I was Minister and getting into government, I wanted to be able to deliver €200 per cow in terms of the support for the suckler sector. And between the SCEP and also the new calf beef welfare scheme as well, which will be launching shortly now as well, that is ensuring that between the cow-calf pair we're delivering €200 in terms of support from government schemes to underpin and support incomes in the suckler sector. And also then last year, and this is something I want to see us increase momentum for over the time ahead as well, was the really innovative approach taken, and really importantly with stakeholders and collaboration right across the industry, and that was to launch the new genotyping programme for Irish cattle. And that involved everyone coming together from the beef industry to the farm representatives, working with ICBF, working with Teagasc, working with the Dairy Industry Ireland, and of course my own department as well, to take that step forward and pool our investment and our commitment to ensure that we become the first country in the world where the full national herd will move towards being fully genotyped. And already we have 10,000 herds now participating in the programme in relation to that. But I want to see all of us continue the journey of working together so that we see our full herd genotyped over the years ahead, and the benefits that then can bring in terms of production, efficiency, and really importantly in terms of profitability of our beef sector and farm family incomes. Also, we've been investing as well in many other schemes, and it's been good to see the progress, particularly as well in the last couple of years on the organic side. We've seen a tripling of the area of our farmland under organic farming since this government came to office, with just over 5% of total agricultural land in the country now farmed organically. And that's already now brought us halfway to our 2030 target of having 10% of our land farmed organically, and that's something we plan to step out as well. I know many of you will have also already taken a tour here today through the different technology villages on your way to the forum centre here. And those villages focus very much on management practices that are relevant to a broad spectrum of beef cattle enterprises. And the research on display here is really critical to the productivity as well as the competitiveness of our beef sector, as well as its sustainability too. And the research has been conducted by Teagasc, much of which is funded by my own department, is very respected both here at home and internationally. And we have some really good examples of research that's going to be impactful being delivered. We've obviously seen the genetics and the breeding research which is happening, aimed at accelerating genetic gain and improved beef output from dairy herds. Also, we're researching on feed and nutrition in terms of developing a balanced and cost-effective diets that will maximise growth and health while also maximising or minimising environmental impact. Also, significant work being conducted by research on environmental sustainability and carbon sequestration, which has delivered significant advancements in relation to animal selection, feed additives, and also grass clover swards, many of which are on great display here today. And also research on animal health and welfare, looking at vaccines, biosecurity measures, and also management practices which can prevent and control diseases and improve animal welfare overall. And also then important research from Teagasc being conducted on meat quality and processing as well, examining factors for ensuring that products meet consumer preferences and market standards, and also develop value-added beef products as well as new processing techniques. And I know my colleague Minister of State Martin Hayden will be here today as well. I'm having and carrying out special responsibility and taking on special responsibility within the department for research. He'll be launching today two further projects here as well, combining funding of over €1.7 million. But of course, that research is only one part of the agricultural knowledge and innovation system, because there's no point in having the knowledge and doing the research unless we see it applied and unless we see it benefited from right throughout the supply chain, but particularly unless we see farmers benefiting from it. And that's why it's so important that we have knowledge transfer through a variety of vehicles, including, as a great example here, this Grange Beef Open Day today, and also then the Teagasc Signpost Farm Programme, which is really impacting and doing really strong work, and also the other advisory activities as well that can really transform research outputs into real impacts. And just to touch on the Sustainable Grassland Farmer of the Year competition, because better grazing management and grass-based feeding systems are a great practical example of how research translates into practical action at farm level. The Sustainable Grassland Farmer of the Year award celebrates farmers who are top performers in growing and utilising grass more sustainably. And I was pleased to launch the 2024 competition earlier as well. And it conveys an important message, one that we can protect both the environment without negatively impacting on pasture growth. The technology villages also cater, of course, here today for both suckler and dairy beef production systems. And greater integration of the dairy and beef sectors was a key action in our shared Food Vision 2030 strategy. And the Dairy Calf to Beef Action Plan, which I launched earlier this year, involves a collaborative effort between Teagasc, Board BIA, Animal Health Ireland, the Irish Cattle and Breeding Federation, and my own department. And its objective is to provide choices to farmers that can be profitable and sustainable. And it lays out that action plan 10 core themes, including knowledge transfer, breeding, and improved animal health. And significant progress has already been made of many of those actions. For example, in March we launched the CSP Dairy Beef Welfare Scheme to incentivise the use of high dairy beef index genetics. And I was taken by some of the feedback from many of the Teagasc staff here today of how that really is coming up a lot in relation to farmer discussions here at Grange today, in relation to the importance of the commercial beef value, which is now being displayed on mart dashboards across the country, as well on calves that are destined for beef production, and that has really started to make an impact. And also we've had real progress as well on targeted communication campaigns in the first quarter of this year on sex semen and the benefits of sourcing animals based on the commercial beef value index as well. And I've also just launched today the Dairy Beef 500 fact sheets, which will help farmers to maximise the potential of beef production from the dairy herd. And those 12 fact sheets deal with topics such as vaccination, nutrition, silage quality and supplementation, and also finishing options for various categories of cattle. And obviously we're seeing a growing number of dairy beef bred calves in our national beef system. So it's really important that we're ensuring that the actions in the Dairy Calf to Beef Action Plan are put in place and stepped out to ensure improved quality of calves from the dairy herd, and also to provide attractive business options for beef farmers. And that Dairy Beef 500 system shows that you can, with good management and the right approach earn €500 net income per hectare off dairy calf to beef systems before your single farm payments or other farm payments come into the equation. So it shows that it can compete really strongly as a farming system, and Teagasc have done great work really in stepping out that, and glad to launch those fact sheets today, which I think will be really useful to farmers too. Also, I want to touch for a moment on the future of farming, because it's essential that the sector has young and enthusiastic people coming through to further develop it. And under our CAP strategic plan, which was rolled out for the first time with new schemes last year and providing significant additional investment in terms of working to achieve generation renewal, with measures such as the complementary income support for young farmers, seeing payments of €33 million issued to date to young farmers, and also a doubling of payments as well, or significant payments for the National Reserve Scheme too, with €4.5 million payments issued under this scheme to date, and also continuing really importantly with the 60% grant rates that are in place for TAM's capital investment schemes for young farmers too, and also the collaborative farming grant scheme, which provides financial support to encourage young farmers to form partnerships with young trade farmers, to form partnerships with young trained farmers. And it's been good to see the progress in that in recent times, and how farmers and young farmers have been embracing that and forming those partnerships, and how farmers coming towards the end of their career have been embracing that as well. And also we had the succession planning advice grant, which, while small, I think was important too in terms of helping to encourage thinking about that and people to make plans in relation to that too. And of course, taxation continues to be a really important anchor for our agricultural sector in terms of our national taxation policies, and many of the measures that we have in place are a really important signal in facilitating succession and in assisting land mobility as well. And it's something we're absolutely committed to maintaining as a government. And for our eligible persons, we continue to have 100% stock relief for young farmers, and then the succession farm partnership schemes also provide for €25,000 tax credit over 5 years as well, to further assist the transfer of land within a partnership structure. And right across the tax system, we're absolutely committed to making sure those are retained and continue as a strong support to the sector, and particularly to farm renewal and generation renewal. As we've seen here today, Teagasc agricultural education activities continue very much to focus on equipping our young farmers with the necessary knowledge to build successful careers in farming. And supporting young farmers will continue to be a key priority for myself and for all of us at government level, and will continue as well to actively engage with stakeholders on ideas in terms of how we can further improve generational renewal throughout our various agriculture sectors too. In conclusion, the beef sector remains one of the most important national industries that we have, and will continue to do that. The grass-fed steer and heifer beef output we have, with strong sustainability credentials, remains a key competitive advantage for Ireland and for our farmers. And I was glad earlier this year too to finally secure, after much work over the last couple of years, PGI status at European level, recognising the particular qualities of Irish grass-fed beef, and indeed to be able to do that on an all-island basis as well, working closely with our colleagues in Northern Ireland. And that's something I want to see develop, working closely with Board BEA over the time ahead, to make sure that in every way possible, as you as farmers are doing everything you can at farm level to produce the strongest premium quality product possible, we will back that in every way possible as a government, working with Board BEA to get that message across in international markets of exactly what that product is, and to do all we can, working with our processors as well, to make sure that in terms of the international markets we premiumise and maximise the value of that in terms of its end sale price, and then really importantly of the price that's available to farmers, whether that's in the mart ring or indeed on the factory floor. So, Goramila Mayogov to all of you. Thank you for all of the work all of you are doing in driving our sector forward. Thanks for all stakeholders in terms of the work you do, in terms of collaborating together, in terms of how we step and support our beef sector going forward. Thanks to our guest speakers who are going to be here and speaking. Our Teagasc team, Mary Donnelly from the Climate Action Council, Pat McDonagh from CEO of Supermac, also Ciaran Fitzgerald, and are of course underpinned by our key Teagasc team and speakers here today as well, who really have driven this whole conference forward and produced such a wonderful day here today. And it's been my delight to be able to come here and join with you to see what's going on. And it's been great to see as well the value I know everyone who's attending is getting out of the day. So, Gura Mila Mayog Balair, pleasure to be with you and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you indeed.
Thanks, Minister. Appreciate that. I'm getting the signal that your time is up, that you must leave. But I promise people that there's time just for one question. So first to the post, one question, and keep it short and to the point. And if not, we will say we will leave you back to Dublin. Okay, please. In the roving bike, here to the middle, please, for a young Teagasc man.
Breffney O'Brien from Agri. Minister, there was funding that was previously available to farmers for rearing calves. Now that money this year has been taken away, and it's going from the calf rearer to the calf producer to produce obviously a higher DBI or a higher CBV calf. But will there be any funding returned to the farmers who are actually rearing these calves for beef production? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Breffney. So listen, this is a new scheme which I've introduced in the last couple of years, a calf beef welfare scheme. And really, listen, we're trying to look to see how we operate it in a way that is going to have the biggest impact for farmers. So we've run it again this year, but we've consulted broadly as well, and we have made adjustments to it. And listen, we're going to have to continue to monitor it, suck it and see as such. Absolutely committed to continuing it. Also absolutely committed to making sure that it returns as much impact as possible for the farmers who are rearing and bringing the calf to beef to production and putting the hard work in. Obviously, last year we would have had it more targeted at the receiving farmer, but there is a big piece of work there to be done in relation to the quality of the calf coming through. Because if you're not getting the right quality of calf onto the farm, it doesn't matter how much you're getting in schemes. You're not going to be on a winner, and we want to make sure that each calf that's comes into a calf to beef system has high beef merit value. So we reorientated this year, directed at that. We're going to keep budget pending, but I'm absolutely committed to keeping it in place. And also we'll assess how it goes this year and see how we can best direct it, with the objective of making sure farmers are making as much profit from the animals they're getting onto farm and the work they're putting in as possible.
With that, thanks. Sorry, okay. Just keep it very short and to the point, please. Yeah, please. Just.
A very short, practical question. You realise that the spreading of manure on farms has a closing date of the 15th of September this year. Now, since many crops went in very late, as you well know, and God knows what weather we'll have on the 15th of September, can you roll that date back to the end of October to give us clear fields on which to spread slurry? A very practical question, real-life farming. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.
Yeah, listen, thanks very much for that question. It's something I get asked a lot. And listen, we've seen it's been wonderful to see the last 2-3 years in particular, the transformation in relation to how right across the farming sector we're putting an increased value on the value of slurry and its potential and use at farm level. And how, collaboratively and with different steps and different measures, we're making sure it's used in a way that grows grass during the year and that it's applied at the right time of year and in the right conditions. And we're seeing that also feed through significantly into the significant reduction we're seeing in the use of chemical fertiliser, because that's down 30% over the last 2 years which is a remarkable drop. Now, some of that would have been accelerated, obviously, by the cost of fertiliser 2 years ago and a year and a bit ago, but that reduction is being held, that reduction in fertiliser usage, and that's because farmers have been adapting their practices. We're using more multi-species sward, more clover, and I'm running schemes to support that. But also, really importantly, what farmers are doing is they're using the slurry on farm in a much more optimal way. Now, but it is important that we spread it at the right times of the year, because what we want that slurry, organic fertiliser, to do is to grow crops and grow grass. And that's why the close season is in place to coincide with growth periods. And I was listening to Countrywide there on RTE Radio 1 last Saturday morning, and that had an hour-long feature actually on on water quality. And I was listening to Eddie Burgess actually of Teagasc, and he was making the point that 80% of nutrient loss from agriculture to water takes place during the close period. 80% takes place during that close period, so your months of after September into February, March. And that's a reflection that when you have the nutrients there in the ground at a time of year when there isn't the growth uptake, whenever the plant isn't utilising the slurry or the organic manure, the chances of it running off is much, much higher. So we have to be very careful about when we spread it at the time of year, but we've also to be really careful about the conditions in which we spread it. That's why we have the closed period there. So I'd be always very reluctant to make any adjustments, though it is possible, any adjustments to that closed period. Only in exceptional circumstances would I, because we have to make sure that we're only spreading it at the time of the year. And ultimately, when that slurry goes in the ground, it ends up driving up the crops and gets all used that way and doesn't end up anywhere else.
Thanks. With that, Minister, I just want to say a very sincere thanks. You know, I did say one, but we're very conscious of gender balance, so we couldn't leave that lady out. I just want to say, Minister, really appreciate you being with us today, spending more than 3 hours with us. Thanks. Safe journey to Dublin.
Thanks, Liam. Thanks everyone. Thank you.
So, before I hand over to Maeve Dineen for our open forum, as I leave the podium, I just want to say a very few short and quick thank yous. I want to say, maybe wearing my other hat, I want to say thanks to FBD for sponsoring today's event. Obviously, the Teagasc team today, Paul Crossan, Pierce Kelly, and their team. I just want to say a big thanks to the BEEF team for the manner in which today was organised. It is also important to acknowledge the presence of the industry leaders today, because this is something that is a collaborative approach. There's little point in Teagasc doing something without having the support and the involvement of the entire beef industry, and I just want to say that is something that is very much acknowledged. I think there needs to be a very special shout out for Margaret O'Donovan and her team that are responsible for coordinating and putting all of this in place today. So Margaret and your team, a very special thanks. I just want to say finally, but by no means least, again, a very special thanks to the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine, to Brendan Gleeson and your team for both your presence and support today. So, again, Maeve Dineen. Maeve will actually introduce her forum in a moment. Maeve Dineen is a well-known journalist and TV presenter, needs very little introduction. But I think there is two people on our team that, you know, a chairman has always the right to have a little prerogative, but they happen to be my parishioners. And that, of course, is Eamonn and Donnacha McCarthy, who live in my little parish in McConalogue. Excellent farmers, excellent neighbours, and I couldn't face home to my good wife this evening without a special acknowledgement for our star pupil, Donnacha McCarthy, who she taught in third and fourth class. So, with that, Maeve, over to you, Maeve.
I've this on, I think. Declan, thank you very much. There's mics coming out my ears here. Thanks very much. Delighted to be here, and I'm going to ask the forum to join me on the stage, please. So while they're coming on stage, I better give a bit of full disclosure here. Now, as you know, Maeve Dineen, for you, those of you who don't know me, former journalist, ear to the ground presenter, and dairy farmer's wife. I won't go as far as to say that I did any dairy farming because he'd never let me live it down. And I'm from a dairy farm as well in Cork traditionally. But my main beef interest came when I started as a cub reporter back in the day in the Farmers Journal. Now this was before the days of the internet, and my first job was effectively to ring the factories and get the factory prices. So this would set the prices then for the week. This was about 25 years ago. And I'd go up to John Shirley and I would say to John, here's the factory prices for the week. And it was a big seller for the newspaper at the time. But every week you'd ring the factories, and every week there was a different excuse for pulling the prices. So on a day like today, they'd be saying, oh, it's too hot, nobody's buying meat, no, price is back. Then next week we call it too cold, no, nobody's buying meat. Then it would be Ramadan, no, nobody's buying meat. But my favourite excuse was when they said, women, the women of today, they're just not cooking big steaks, they're just not cooking big roasts. So we were being blamed for the factory prices back. So when I came to address this, took a look at the beef prices and I said, for once, now I know nobody in this group is going to agree that beef prices are going well, but the backdrop of the beef prices seems to be semi-okay for a change. So that is one positive as we face into this forum. So I'm delighted to be joined by a stellar team here today. And the forum is going to take that. I'll ask a few questions. We have a good team that will dig into good and strong, and then we'll open it to the floor. So don't be shy. It's not too often we get people like this crew to answer some questions. So I'll start by just doing a quick introduction. We'll start very end. Pat McDonagh needs no introduction. Supermac. Delighted to have you on board. Then we have what is a rare commodity, I believe. They told me he was the wealthiest man on the stage after Pat. He's a viable organic beef farmer. So we're all going to figure out how this is working for Ken. So we look forward to hearing from Ken later on. Then we have Eamonn and Donnacha McCarthy. They're going to tell us about their succession planning, really, and how you make it work down there in Cork. We have Ciaran Fitzgerald. Ciaran, you're an old hand at this. We've seen you on many a podium. And Ciaran has a strong background in the ag industry, and you've always been a very solid advocate for the agri industry and as a food economist. Then, of course, we have Maeve Dineen. Maeve is the chair of the Climate Change and Advisory Council, and 30 years no less. Now, you don't look at Maeve, I have to add that. European Commission, with the European Commission, and ultimately Director of Renewables, Energy and Efficiency. And of course, we have Frank O'Mara. Frank used to lecture me in college. I don't know, can you remember that, Frank? I can.
Yeah.
we won't go any further. No. So, well, just to open the floor, I might start with you, Pat, if you don't mind. You're a very strong advocate for Irish beef, and you're a strong purchaser and user of Irish beef. Tell me how it works with Supermac.
Well, yeah, we've had the same supplier for 42 years, Grange and Meath in Monaghan, and our instructions to them is to use all Irish beef. We believe that, well, first of all, from a common sense point of view, you should always be supporting the people in the area that are your customers. And we are mostly situated to a large degree in rural areas, so therefore our customers are generally farmers, or at least 50% of them would be at any rate. But what we look for is quality, and there is no better quality than Irish food generally, but Irish beef in particular. It's grass-fed, it's traceable, and that's what the customer wants.
And you say there you have the same supplier for 42 years. What you said? How many years?
Sorry?
How many years have you the same supplier?
42 years.
42 years. And what kind of conditions do you are they working under? What kind of contracts? What kind of deals do you work with them?
Sorry, I can hear you better now. Sorry.
He must, I suppose, put it this way. He must be well looked after if he's 42 years supplying you beef.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to build a relationship with your supplier, and you get to trust them and they get to trust you. And so therefore, it's the same in any business. It's all about retaining customers and looking after them. So, I mean, it's a win-win situation. And if something goes wrong, as it does from time to time, you can work together and work it out.
And how much would you be buying off them now per week or per month? Would you have any angle on that?
With that supplier, I'm talking about burgers now.
Yeah.
We spend about 6.5 to 7 million per annum, and we'd spend the same then with in the hotel business and in the plaza type, deli type business, about 5 to 6 million. So it's a substantial amount, but as I say, you know, you can rely on him and he can rely on us, and that's basically it, you know. And first of all, in any business, you have to know your product, you have to know your unique selling point, you have to know your market, and you have to know how to market to your market as well. So that's basically, and when you know and you have suppliers there for years, you know you can rely on them, then it gives you great confidence. And as I say, the traceability factor is fantastic, because if somebody claims something that was something wrong, it's great to be able to go back and trace it right back to the farmer that produced it.
And you're part of a wider corporate structure, so no doubt there's certain pressures on you around making sure where your beef comes from is sustainable. And how are you making sure that the beef is from that they're involved in sustainable practices?
So my hearing isn't too good,
No,
Maeve, sorry.
the hearing. Like,
What was the question again?
like, you're in a huge corporate structure, so there's a certain pressure to make sure they're hitting all their sustainability elements that are required. Is there any pressures that you put on the farmer to ensure that?
We would have quality people call at the factory or the premises at least 2 or 3 times a year, and so therefore, and then even go to the producers as well. So yeah, we'd have to have quality checks like that. Otherwise, you can't stand over it totally. But you can stand over it when you're able to trace the animal back to the farm and back to the factory where it was killed or whatever. You know, so it's not complicated when you have people working together with you.
Yeah, it's a huge operation, though.
Yeah, it's a big operation, but I'd probably say that the chicken side of the business is growing more so than the beef side.
Okay.
And this is something we've seen over the last 5 to 6 years. For whatever reason, I'm not quite sure. I think, it's just that's the way it's happening.
Demand.
And generally speaking, across the country, that's widespread at the minute. So it is a challenge there. But you know, when I look at the Irish beef side of things, I think it's around 50% of the animals are exported to England, or of the beef is exported to England. That's a huge market. That's a market that can buy from probably anywhere now that Brexit is there, or certainly in the next year or so they can. And so therefore, but they can for quite some time as well. So therefore, it is awfully important to look after that market, because that's your big market. I think, as I say, 75% of the beef that's sold in the UK comes from Ireland, and that's a massive amount. And your market is right next door to you, so it's for transport and for margins and whatever. That's certainly one to look after.
Ciaran, this is something that you've looked at obviously for a long time, the market for Irish beef and how Irish beef does. Currently, where do you see the future of Irish beef?
Yeah, I think the future of Irish beef is in the UK market principally, because the UK market would always be our next door neighbour. They're a deficit area, and then there are strong demands and markets in the rest of Europe. There are, at the same time, when you look at long-term demand for beef, European beef demand is probably flat to declining slightly. So there are going to be opportunities in the rest of the world, and that's going to be a challenge. But I think the track record, actually, of the beef processing industry in Ireland for the last 30 years has been about managing change and dealing with the fact that, you know, at the end of the 1980s, we were a largely frozen beef exporting country, exporting beef in a frozen state to North Africa, Middle East. Post-BSE and policy changes, That is now a fresh food business that is, primarily, as I said, focused on the UK as our nearest neighbour, but there's a fresh beef element to it. What the industry, I think, has been very good at is understanding what the route to market is, and that's, it's a nice phrase, but what does it mean? Well, currently and in the near future, the route to market is sustainability. There'll always be a price element. There clearly has to be a taste element, but the sort of tertiary route to market is going to be sustainability, and that means earlier finishing for Irish beef than we've been currently used to. We have the strength of the grass-fed piece and the dilemma then to reach the early finishing criteria, but I think that all can be done, and we're very lucky to have a Teagasc, National Food Authority, that in this and a number of areas has developed, if you like, templates for how we can continue to produce grass-fed beef that is meeting all the tender and eating requirements, but can increasingly meet the sustainability requirements. And again, I would be very optimistic about beef. I think there's a certain irony in the fact that, if you look at what the World Health Organization, World Food Organization they say by 2035, demand for animal protein will have increased by 15 million tonnes equivalent. If all that beef is produced in the countries that are going to eat more, then the emissions associated with increased demand will be huge. That is a big challenge. Whereas if more of that beef can be produced in a place like Ireland that has the emissions capability and has the science capability of developing more, then I think that's a better planetary outcome. I know that is an issue as regards our national accounting, but in terms of the global challenge, I think that makes a lot of scientific sense.
And that brings me on nicely to you, Mary. You're on the record as saying that farmers are often being blamed too much for this, and that the farmers, they're doing the best they can, but at the same time, policies need to move faster and be deeper.
Well, I think, I'm in the Climate Change Advisory Council, and I think the key word here is change. And I take up exactly what you were saying. We are going through a process of change. And the change comes about, it's not new in farming. Farming has changed always. Perhaps the difficulty that we're being challenged with at the moment is that we need to change faster, which means that we need, on the one hand, government to lead, and its supports, its direction, its communication, but it's also finance. Farmers are following, but it's not just, shall we say, government on the one hand and farmers here. I think there is a middle group in Ireland that could help more, and I'll take two examples. If I take the Acclimatise, for example, the target, and the Minister mentioned this, was to reduce the overall volume of fertiliser, and we're down now 30%, mainly due to price, but it's holding, and that's very good. But the second part of that was a switch from CAN to protected urea. And when you look at the stores, the co-op stores, the ag stores, the protected urea volumes aren't there for farmers to buy. So I think there is an onus on the industry to play their part and ensure they facilitate farmers to make the right decision. And since we're here talking about beef, and you've mentioned it, if you look at the MAC curve from Teagasc, early finishing is one of the key, and it's a big one. This is a 1 million tonnes of emissions we're talking about, and yet the beef bonus scheme does not reflect that, and it's not rocket science to change that, to make it more financially useful for farmers to actually adhere to that and deliver it. So yes, the government clearly has a role. Farmers are doing it, but there's also a role for those in industry, in the co-ops, to play their part to facilitate the decisions that individual farmers are making.
But I guess they will ask then, Mary, well, what's in it for us? So what's the incentive for them to drive this forward?
Greater profitability, a better access to a more profitable and returnable market. They can demonstrate the sustainability. That's the third leg of the stool, which Ireland can use and demonstrate to the world markets that we send to. And that's what we need to do, put it in place on the ground, get it disseminated as fast as we can, and that becomes intrinsic to the message. It's not just a Green Ireland, green label, it's green in reality.
I'm sure most of the farmers here today will say we're doing all we can, we're doing our best now, and sometimes I'd say they feel, okay, what more are we expected to do? But we're looking for a reduction of emissions by 25% by 2030, and the EPA has come out and they're saying we'll go to about 19%. What's going to happen if we don't hit the targets?
Well, I don't want to get into the the legislation of what happens about it. I mean, if we don't make the target in the first carbon budget, it makes the second carbon budget harder because we lose. Just makes it the objective gets worse.
Yeah.
And then if we don't make it in the second one, it gets even worse in the third. But on the way, we hit 2030, and then we are confronted by financial fines coming out of Europe. So, I mean, our own legislation doesn't fine ourselves, which wouldn't really make a lot of sense. But the European legislation does fine Ireland. And at the moment, on the last count, we're looking at a bill starting at 8 billion euros. And that was a calculation we did about 2 years ago. So my concern would be it would be even higher by the time we get to 2030.
So would you, as your role as chair of the Climate Council, would you encourage the government to front-load funding to help the farmers reduce emissions, diversify? Is this what you'd be calling for?
Absolutely, and if you look at all of the recommendations that the Council has made up to date, and we'll be coming out with one again in about 2 months' time, I mean, what we're really pushing the government is, firstly, to focus on the top 3 MAC curve issues. That's the fertiliser, reduce the overall volume and switch to projected urea. Younger age at slaughtering, again, the beef bonus coming in there. And third, roll out new technologies, feed additives, both for animals and for additives for manure, to reduce methane going into the system. These are quantified, they've been looked at, they are applicable to the Irish system. But we shouldn't stop just there. I think it's also very important that we look at the other side of using our land. I mean, I don't have to tell people here about, peatlands and re-wetting. It's a process that's going on at the moment. One of the other areas, and we have been, Brendan will smile when I say this, we have been pushing the department very, very hard on forestry. Forestry as an alternative source of income for farming. Energy as an alternative source of income for farming. It's not talking about all the land going into trees or energy, but parts of it. And supporting farmers in adding in diversified sources of income so that their income is maintained in this new world that we're going into. And that needs to be supported not just by government policy, but also by finance.
Frank, as Director of Teagasc, you're obviously looking at all these initiatives and how they're practical on the ground for farmers. And today, I must compliment you on the occasion, there is every sort of technology and every sort of initiative for the beef farmers. But as you look at which one of the initiatives that are out there are you most excited about? Which one do you think will actually make a difference on the ground to the farmers in terms of profitability and in goals?
Yeah. So, thanks, Maeve. And look, before I get into answering that, I just wanted to, say we're delighted with the event here today and pay compliments to all my colleagues who are working very hard over the last couple of months to organise it, and all our partners who are here today that make this a successful event, but particularly to thank the very large numbers of farmers who've turned up here today. There's no point casting sweetness on the desert air when we're talking about all this brilliant technology. We obviously want people to be here to see it. So look, what excites me, you can't just pin this down to one technology, because I suppose what excites me really is the potential that's there for improved incomes and improved, I suppose, environmental performance on our beef farms. And I think there's a great future for the beef industry. When you look, and there's an awful lot of very strong fundamentals. Like we have our grass, which is our competitive advantage, and it contributes to the quality of the product, as Pat just mentioned. It's so important, but it is a tremendous advantage we have over most other countries that produce beef. We have a very good quality product, and Pat talked about that, the value he sees in Irish beef. But also our meat exporters and Borbia, they've been able to get most of our beef going into very high premium type markets. So our Irish beef is valued, you know, it is seen as a very high quality product. And I think we have good institutions. Ciaran mentioned Teagasc as one of those, but we also have ICBF, we have Bord Bia, we have Animal Health Ireland, we have the Department of Agriculture, which acts in a very supportive role to the industry by and large. And I think when you look even wider than that, and you look at the farm organisations, I think we've a good set of farm organisations, and delighted that Francie Gorman, the president of the largest of those, the Irish Farm Association, is here today. Our meat industry is very solid, you know, very high-tech, efficient industry. So we've all those solid fundamentals. And on top of that then, the technologies that are on display here today are all about improving the efficiency, the profitability and the environmental performance of our farms. There's loads that farmers can adopt, and it's not all pie in the sky stuff, because here today we have lots of our demonstration farms, Ken being one of those, you know, and so on, either both in the suckler side and in the dairy beef side. And when they do utilise the technologies to the most practical way possible on their farms, they are seeing the results in terms of profitability. So, you know, for farmers to say, I could do that, you know, or I could do 2 or 3 of the things that they're doing, you're going to see it in your bottom line, and also will contribute to lower emissions and better water quality. So there's massive potential out there, I think, by doing things that are here and now and available, that your neighbours might be doing or thinking about. There's massive potential to improve your performance and what we're talking about today, to secure your future in beef farming.
So speaking of securing a future, we're on to our organic man, and there's nothing like, you know, a showing to show what you really do. So I think Declan has a video there that he'll play.
Hi, my name is Ken Gill, and I'm an organic beef and tillage farmer. I'm situated in Offaly, just near the village of Clonbelogue. My family has been here just 100 years next year. My grandfather bought the place. I'm lucky enough that the farm is 90 hectares of decent land, and it's all in one block, and that allows me to farm full-time, which is unusual, but I'm very, very lucky to be able to do that. 65 cows, calving in the autumn, and I finish everything at 2 years of age off of grass. So one of the big changes I made once I joined the programme was to put in a lot of paddocks. And to me, that's been probably the biggest return on investment. For the sake of a few rolls of wire and a couple of stakes, it has really improved the grassland management. The other thing I've got is every time I reseed, and that's part of the rotation in organics, there'll be an extra bit of white clover goes into the reseed. So all of my new grasses have a lot of white clover in them. The other thing is part of the rotation will always be red clover. And red clover is a vital part of the whole system, really, because the red clover is what I feed to the stores in the second winter, and they do good weights from that. One of the things that's probably a little bit different on this farm is the fact that I'm autumn calving. Because I've been 100% AI for the last number of years, and because I've been selecting bulls that are good replacement bulls, it means when their calves are heifer calves, they're well able to calve at 2 years of age. They've been bred for it. And I have had no trouble. I don't have any extra trouble calving a heifer than I do calving a cow at this stage, providing I've got the right bull on them and they've been bred for the job. We've had a lot of hedges, and we wouldn't have ever taken out very many of the hedges over the years. The fields were reasonably big. So the biggest change over the last few years is kind of not just retaining the hedges, but allowing them to grow more than they used to. I put in 500 metres of hedging. It's just brilliant because it's a very big field, and it was just run straight up the middle of it, and another shorter one as well, just dividing some fields. They're giving extra shelter for cattle when they go out early, shelter for cattle when they're out in the winter, but also from a biodiversity point of view, those extra hedges are really making a difference. People have asked me every time whether financially I'm better off or not, and for the longest time I was very reluctant to say I was, because a lot of what I've done in the last 10 years have improved the way I farm. The paddocks, the better breeding, all of that has definitely contributed to being more profitable. But bottom line, I'm now prepared to say that organics has also made a contribution to that. So probably there's 3 legs to that stool, but organics definitely one of them. It doesn't have to be about producing more and more, it's about producing as much as you can for as little as you can without doing any harm to the environment. And that's something that I've always lived by here, and it's really working for me here.
Done, Ken.
Okay.
I'd say if you play your cards right, you might get a slice of the 7 million action there from Pat next to you. So it's a very impressive setup you have here now, but like you said, it took a while to get there, to get profitable. What were the hurdles that you had to meet along the way? And I guess to use that phrase, if you knew then what you knew now, what would you do different?
If I knew then what I know now, I'd have gone organic 10 years earlier. I haven't regretted it at all. When you ask the hurdles, it's the fear of the unknown is the big thing. And when you go in, and I've only been 10 years now, so I remember what it was like when I went in first. And it is a leap into the dark. You're not quite sure what you're doing. I know Teagasc have now come on a long way. There are more advisors who are there for advising organics, and that's great. But I think really at the end of the day what it came down to was you've got to know your own place. And I think that's one thing that's a little bit different in organics compared to conventional. It's very much place specific. It's what works for you and even what works within specific fields. And it's getting to know your place. And 10 years now of the system I'm reasonably happy with, and I think but it is the fear of the unknown is definitely at the start.
And where to now in the future? Like what's your next 10 years looking like? What's the plan?
As I say, I'm quite happy with the systems. If I was 40 years younger, I would have a lot of different things that I might do. But for now, I really want to perfect the system I'm in. I would love to have 100% 5-star cows because I really believe in that ICBS system really works well. So improved breeding is going to be a big thing. Tighten up on grazing and maybe growing a little bit more tillage if I can squeeze that into the system. But yeah, that's for the future. For me is whoever comes along next, there's huge potential. There's a lot could be done with the place. But for me, I'm happy enough just to really...
And you get a lot of interest from other farmers in it now, I'm sure you do.
Yeah, guys are beginning to realise. I think one of the great things is they drive past, they're expecting to see the place to be full of weeds, they're expecting poor quality cattle because that was the old image of what organics used to be. It very much isn't the image anymore. Cattle, there's no reason organic cattle can't be of the same quality as anyone else's. And within a slightly reduced rate, you can still grow a lot of grass organically.
So you'll be around for another 100 years?
Yep.
And speaking of being around for another 100 years, we'll move on to Eamonn and Donnacha, who obviously the theme of this is sustainable beef for the future. And as we know, there is a difficulty in getting younger generations into farming. And actually, when I was doing Ear to the Ground, we did this story on succession. And if I made one call in trying to get somebody to talk on succession, I must have made about 50 calls to get people. And they're all very willing to tell you down the phone about it, but nobody's willing to go on camera about it. It was actually easier to get a farmer to talk about his cocaine addiction than it was to get somebody to talk about succession and succession planning. So no fear here with Eamonn and Donnacha. We're very happy to talk about it. But before we start, we have a video from the guys as well. So Declan will get you to play that, please.
My name is Eamonn McCarthy. I'm farming here in Glendyne, just outside Gill, in County Waterford. We're doing suckler to beef farming. We're doing under 16-month bull beef. We have 30 cows calving in the springtime and about 15 to 17 in the autumn. I'm farming here with my son Donnacha. We are in a registered partnership heading towards a succession partnership. The farm, my father and his two brothers bought it in 1962 and it was handed over to me in 1995, being the only person that was interested in it. And now we're gone full circle and I'm at the stage of handing it on again. Well, the ultimate goal is to have it handed over before I'm too old and before he's too old. More so him too old, and I'll be the major partner at the start and the minor at the end, and vice versa. I would actually love to be farming here for another 20 or 30 years, if God spares me. But that's not fair to him. And I thought this is a way that we can get him involved and I can stay involved at the same time. There's no good in me giving it to him when he's 50.
My name is Donnacha McCarthy. I'm farming outside Gill with my father Eamonn. We're in partnership. We have about 50 suckler cows. Yeah, well, I was always interested in farming as long as I can remember. My mother always says to me, since I was 4, she knew what I was going to do, so there was never really anything else for me. Like, I'd be part-time here. I'm an AI technician as well, so I'm busy for some of the summer, and I work on a dairy farm when I can and do a bit of milkings here and there. But I'm here as much as I can. Like, the partnership for me, I suppose you have more responsibility on your shoulders. You're kind of more involved, like, than you were before. With me being in a partnership, I suppose it helps develop the thing because there's two people to push it on, and more of a reason maybe to push it on if it's going to be farmed well into the future. Well, as a young farmer, it's very beneficial, like, that your parent is very open to ideas, like, and he always was. In fairness, he was always going to the farm walks back to years, like, and he'd always take on new ideas. So, you know, you'd see in certain situations where the older generation don't want to change anything, like, and 'tis a real stifler on the young farmer, but that's not an issue here, thankfully. The plan for the farm going forward is not to increase numbers. We have enough. We're highly enough stocked. We want to reduce age at finish further. Lower costs, I suppose, will be a part of that, and just keep improving, really. Just improve a little bit everywhere if we can. Yeah, my parents have always been very supportive of me taking over, but it's great to have a plan in place now that I can kind of make my own plan to be moving home and kicking on.
Like, what's key here is you are very open to the idea of succession. Now, you're both working off farm, though. And is that like, how does it operate on a practical level?
I suppose I'm milking cows just next door, so I'm at home almost all the time, and I do most of it. He's there then if I want a break or to give me a hand or whatever.
So you do most of it, is that what you're saying?
Well, I do a fair bit of it, yeah.
So it's not quite the partnership yet.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's it. It's like I said in the video, I do the lion's share now, and he'll be doing the lion's share later on.
You clearly want to go into farming, Donnacha. This is something that you want to do?
Oh yeah, I'd be at home full time if there was 2 wages out of it, like, but you know, it's a medium-sized suckler farm. There's one good wage out of it, but I'm young and there's not enough work for the 2 of us to be at home, so I may as well be off farm earning an income and investing in the farm to build sheds and improve it if we can. So that's my idea of working off farm.
And just on a practical, who approached the topic? Because this is a big thing out there. Who broached the topic first to say, listen, you know, I'm thinking of, you know, going into a party, we're thinking of changing it. Did you sit down, or did it just kind of happen? Or did you have a big row at the PTO one day and you said you can have it, and they said, no, you can have it?
It would be me, I'd say. I brought it up. I suppose I'm a firm believer in the younger people taking it on. It wouldn't be fair to him to be hanging around there just helping out and doing that for nothing. At least now he knows where he's going. And like, I can't take it with me. I don't want to take it with me. So, yeah.
Pat, when you hear something like that around succession, I mean, in business it's very common to have a big succession plan. Are the farmers losing out here that they're not willing to step up and think about succession plans? They're leaving it too late?
Well, obviously there's a very good relation between father and son here. That is not always the case, you know, there's, for whatever reasons. But I think for the future, you know, the farm has to be substantial enough for young people to make a decent living from it. And that's not always the case either, because down the west where I come from, it's mostly part-time farmers. And a lot of young people aren't interested in putting in the same hours, the same hard work, the 7-day week job, the cows calving or sheep lambing or whatever the case may be. And they want to kind of have an easier lifestyle. And I think that's going to be a big challenge for the future, because unless you have a substantial farm enough that somebody can make a decent living out of it, I think you're going to see a lot of farms amalgamating, or smaller farms amalgamating for the future. But I suppose it's a challenge. It's a challenge in everything. Young people now want to travel. They want to go abroad. They want a more, I won't say easy lifestyle, but a more regular lifestyle that you're working 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, or whatever the case may be. And it's the exception, I think, rather than the rule, of where younger people want to continue on the farm. And there are people, obviously, of course, that want to do that. But I think you will see farms, amalgamating and being sold
and
to
Ciaran,
people.
where does that leave the future then of beef farming if we have that? If we have the smaller farmers, do you see it? Is this the future, that they'll amalgamate, that they'll get bigger, smaller, part-time? Or is this the future, something like Donnacha?
I would think this is the future. I mean, there's a lot of talk at times about what sort of a farming model we have in Europe and even in Ireland. And we had our president talking recently about American-style farms. I don't know what happened with the dog walk that day, but there's a particular size of farm that is supported, particularly in beef, by a combination of part-time and yet has the capability to produce the right animal and to buy into the current needs around environment and sustainability. I think the challenges are, as has been mentioned, the question of incentivization. There will have to be incentives for people to produce cattle at an earlier finishing age. There is a disconnect, I would suggest, between what we want to pay for food and incentivization. Like there's a lot of talk about no product should be sold below cost or loss led. It is all the time. It probably needs initiative at a European level because it can be very hard to do at local level. And look, if we export 90% of our beef, having a below cost selling ban in Ireland isn't the issue. But there really does need to be a much better connect. We are a highly regulated agricultural and food producing sector that I suppose emphasises the regulation and then says, and by the way, good luck with price return. There needs to be a much stronger connect about price and income return, and that has to be a better cap or government support, combined with what people are prepared to pay for food.
And it is that connection at a broader level, especially on policies. For example, Pat, you've run into a lot of hurdles with your Clare Plaza there down the motorway to the tune of about 1.5 million by the sounds of things. And really, what's blocking that all the time is planning.
Oh. Yeah, it's a massive problem.
Because when we see this morning now in the newspaper, there's a headline that says, and Mary, I'd welcome your input here, that 75 wind turbines are at risk because of policy issues and government issues. So on one hand, we're being asked to do all this piece, and on the other hand, we're being blocked at every piece. So what can be done here? What are the government listening to this? Is our planning roles, are they really stagnating any sort of growth on something like this?
Well, if I may, just on the article that was in the paper today, the council, Frank will remember, we wrote to the government on that about a year ago, and we did some research on it, and there are 287 turbines that will have to be taken down across the country because of 10-year planning, 15-year planning. It was given years ago with a different. And yet, if you build a house, you don't get planning for 15 years or 20 years or whatever. So why are we putting planning limits on energy, which we need in our community? So there, ultimately, it is open to the government at the stroke of a pen to write a ministerial order to lengthen those planning periods.
You're experiencing this all the time, Pat.
Yeah, well, look, as we said, when I look out every morning, I can see about 36 wind turbines who are stagnant or still. And, at a time when energy costs are going through the roof and have gone through the roof, and the ESB have been told to take them down. Now, that'll do more environmental damage than leaving them up there and using them. So common sense isn't prevailing in a lot of things. And it's gone out of the equation in a lot of cases in relation to planning. And the single objector can hold up a project for any length of time. And look, I could speak for an hour on it, but
that's a whole different presentation.
It's costing the country, and it's costing business, and it's costing farming, and it's costing everything a lot of money. And it is being addressed in fairness. I think there's a new planning law was brought.
But it's
to
having
the
an
Dáil,
impact.
there quite recently. It has to go through all the process, so that'll probably take another while. But at least it's being addressed.
Now, I'm keen to open it to the floor because I know that it's not every day we have a panel like this. So we'll just open it up if anybody has any questions, and we'll get some mics out to it. So, yeah, this lady here, you might just say your name and if you're affiliated to anybody before you. No, just say your name. That's okay.
Good afternoon. Linda Clare from Dunboyne, County Meath. Thank you so much for coming the distance that you came and for your expertise and for sharing it with us. I wish to direct my question directly to the lady, if I may call her.
Mary, yeah.
Yes, climate action change is all your business. You have reminded us of our, what would you say, the barriers that we have to jump in farming. Have you also given talks to 1 county councils, 2 Uisce Éireann, 3 airport authorities and airplane companies in the same manner? Are they also being offered restrictions and barriers as well? Or is it just the farmers?
In the council, we look across the entire economy, and I just take the 5 sectors that we look at. So in May, we came out with the chapter on electricity, because electricity has to reduce their emissions by nearly 70% in the electricity sector. So our first chapter was in May on the electricity sector. We then came out to the industrial sector at the end of May, and they have a target to reduce by 50% over the period. Tomorrow we will launch our transport chapter, and the target there is also 50%, and it is probably the biggest single problem area that we have in the country. We will, before we're finished, do the built environment, come next month, and then in September we will specifically come out with a chapter on agriculture. So we look at all areas of the economy. All areas of the economy have targeted reductions. Some areas are doing better than others. Shall we say the poor performer is transport, and you'll hear me tomorrow talking about that. If there was one message, climate change is a reality. We're all facing it. We're all going to feel it. We all need to make change. But, nobody's responsible for climate change, and nobody can solve it. Not one person is responsible, not one person can solve it, or even one group. It is only by everybody doing something that it cumulatively will add together and make a difference. And if there was one message out of today, and I'm sorry it's a beef forum, but my last message today is we must reduce the amount of fossil fuels that we use in this country. It's 68% of our emissions. So if we can reduce fossil fuels in our transport, in our heating, in our power, in cities, in towns, and in the rural community, we will do the best thing we can for climate change. And that's our first priority in this country.
Thanks, Mary. Anybody else looking to get in? Yeah, there's a man down the back there, please.
Declan Hanrahan, Chair with the IFA Livestock Committee. I think Ciaran Fitzgerald has hit the nail on the head that the disconnect between food production, sustainable food production, and what the consumer is going to be asked to pay for it, or the people, or the establishments that are driving the climate change are willing farmers to be paid for that product. Everyone talks about sustainability, and farmers live with sustainability every day. We work with the climate, we work with our land. And it's, you know, at times you hear about the loss of biodiversity and everything in this country. But if you anywhere, and especially in the summertime, stand up on any high point in this country and look down across our country, we're a green country, small fields, small patchwork of fields surrounded by so much vegetation. That irritates farmers. We see from base Chris what we're applying for now, that beef farmers, all farmers, their space for nature is a lot more than what was previously predicted. So we are willing to produce food sustainably. We are doing it as it is. But we see the hypocrisy in the system where no one is willing to put their hand in the pocket and give more for that product at the end of the day, and not going to be asked to give more for it. And then we come and we see Europe at the same time driving more policy down on top of us, while at the same time asking to ratify a Mercosur trade deal with countries who have none whatsoever history or whereabouts of climate change or even sustainability. They talk about equivalence of standards. There is no equivalence of standards. And just one point, and it might be, we in this country have a full traceability system. Thanks be to God, last week it was showed up on the bovine side, how good it is. How many millions of cattle are in Brazil today that no one knows where they are, what traceable, anything? 96 to 98% of the herds in this country every year do a TB herd test. They're put through a system. We have a complete traceable system. So for the people that are making these decisions to stand up and ask farmers to come along this road with us, while at the same time the hypocrisy within the system. We have no trouble producing food sustainable, and thanks very much, Frank, for today, because you were proven and your carbon conference last week and everything, what is going on and what we can do. We're not afraid of change, but someone has to give us the credit for what we're doing and pay us for what we do. You talk there, and I'm not going to hog it now, you talk about reducing the age of slaughter. The minister was there, briefly, fair play to him. I didn't get a chance to come up with it. But that is just a prime example of a small budget that would make a big change to the calf rearer. Because the figures there prove 60% of farmers who rear calves, after 5 years, exit it because it's not profitable enough. It needs support, and we need support at farm level, and we need support the whole way up along the chain, and a recognition for the product that we're supplying. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Ciaran, level playing pitch?
Well, yeah, I mean, I made the point, and I think it's important. There's a certain degree of hypocrisy even when you think that in the last month we've banned cars coming in from China that are fully electrical in order that people in Germany and other places can continue to make diesel cars. So, you know, there needs to be more consistency. I think at the same time we have to get on with our own piece. Our route to market is sustainability. We have the technology. We do need real price incentives. We need less sort of electioneering talk around nobody should have to sell below cost. And we do need regulations in this space, and I think it has to be European.
You're in an organic system, so you're doing all the right things, allegedly. You're doing everything right. You know, are you being paid for that?
For me, I think the thing that's been missed here, and Teagasc brings out, they have this list of 12 things you can do to reduce your greenhouse gases. 2 of them don't apply to me because it's to do with fertilizer, which I don't use. The other 10 are 10 things that I try to do to the best of my ability. And I will always say those 10 things, reducing greenhouse gases, every single one of them is making me more money as well. It's very simple as far as I'm concerned. I don't think there's anything you need to do to reduce greenhouse gases that isn't also profitable. I may be wrong, but in my case, I'm going by that list I think it's there.
Donnacha, and no offence to the audience, is one of the younger farmers here, and we're led to believe that your generation stay awake at night concerned about climate change. Like, is this something you think about when you're farming? The future, climate change, what you can do to be more sustainable, how you can farm in a better way?
And I think Ken is right. I think of it the exact same way. Anything we do to be more sustainable increases profitability, like, age at finish and calving at 2 years, all these type of things. They're all good for both your bottom line and the sustainability of your farm.
And Frankie, like, you've tried all these, you're seeing the results, they do work.
Oh, they do work, and look, Ken said what I was going to say, that there's lots of things, practical things that farmers can do that both reduce emissions or improve water quality and at the same time improve the bottom line. And look, I think Declan made very good points there about, the challenges of, trying to encourage people to reduce emissions. When I sat outside my back door last Sunday morning, and I counted 7 vapor trails heading west at the time. And look, we see all the hullabaloo at the moment because of the industrial action and people's holiday plans being discommoded and all that. But look, we can all say that, and I think we have to get on with our own business, and I think by and large farmers are. And I would say, Declan, look, we always say there's 3 things farmers need for support to change. They need advice from the likes of us or from other people. I suppose there is a role for regulation, maybe to bring on the kind of people that don't want to engage. And there is a point or a place for incentives, and for whether that's government-based incentives or market-based incentives, they certainly have a role to play. And I always try to find the positives in things. And I suppose, when you look at beef, when I was going to school, we were exporting a huge amount of our beef into low-value third country markets, or was going into storage to be sold out at some stage. Now our beef, our markets, the bulk of our beef is going into high-value markets in Europe or the UK. And we need to be trying to target the premium consumers in those markets, the ones that will pay the price for beef. And it's, quality is, the taste is obviously hugely important, safety is obviously hugely important, but now sustainability is also part of that package of getting your product into the likes of Pat's food businesses or the best shelves of the supermarkets.
Yeah. Great. Any other questions? Just before we finish up, because I'm conscious of time, Pat, I'm just interested to, when beef farmers sometimes are seen as the poor relation to the dairy farmers, and that they have to step it up and do more and be better, and the mindset sometimes is difficult to get into. And I'm interested in your mindset when you decided to take on McDonald's on a trademark. So Supermac vis-a-vis McDonald's, I mean, it was all over the Financial Times, you were all over the thing, that it was kind of a David and Goliath. What was it that you said, okay, enough is enough, I'm not going to let them to take the Big Mac?
Well, they started the fight.
They started the fight. That's great.
So that was one thing. And when we applied for the trademark, they objected to it. So we found out, or checked out and found out that something like 820 trademarks, of which they were only using maybe 20, 15 or 20. So that was restricting anyone else, not just us, but anyone else from using any of those trademarks, because they were registered to McDonald's, and they protect them fairly strenuously. So we realized that the Big Mac was registered not just as a burger, but it was registered as a restaurant, which they weren't using. So that was the big one to go after. And in business, you're going to come across obstacles from time to time. And if you believe in yourself and you believe in your own product and you believe that it's right what you do, then so be it. Go for it.
Yeah.
And it's a situation. They have whatever 5 or 40,000 restaurants probably worldwide entirely, but that doesn't mean to say that you don't have a right to your rights as well. So that was really what it was about. And we had a very good team with us, mostly from our own organisation. That kind of, and look at, if you have a good team at anything, you can succeed.
So believe in your product, have a good team, you can do what you need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you know, when you look at it today, I would have no fear of beef farming in the future, because Irish beef and Irish food generally is accepted as the world's best. Like when I was involved in business in America, you know, okay, there was every sort of obstacle put to bring it in, but it was still the most probably acceptable. And when you talk to people, they will pay a premium for a product they think has sustainably grown or whatever. And but the quality is key. And when your quality is right, you can go out there and fly the flag anywhere. So yeah, it's as I say, grass-fed, you know, traceable, and good quality. They're your key marketing areas.
So just any final questions before I wrap it up? I think we're good. Well, all that's left for me to say is to thank the panel most sincerely. I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you for doing the videos. Thank you for your time. I'm going to hand it over to Frank just to say some final thank yous before I hand it over to Pat Dillon to say close the event.
Yeah. So look, I just wanted to thank my colleagues here in the panel for participating. And you said it there, and Pat, if you have a good product and a good team, you can do anything. And I think in Teagasc, look, we're very proud of the work we do and the advice that we can give farmers. But really, I just want to mention the team that we had, you know, that put the event together here today, and pay a compliment to them and thank them for their work putting on this event, which you know, we're delighted so many people have turned up today. So from my point of view, just a big boola boss for our team.
I'll hand it over to you, Pat.
Okay, I'm not going to keep you long. Thanks, Maeve, for chairing the session. You did a great job, and thanks very much. I was at a conference this morning, and there was a guy from the FAO talking, and we all know there's two sides to climate change. There's food security and there is environmental issues. And what he was saying, that there's a requirement for increased productivity from agriculture, which is a story that has to go along as long as it's not negative in terms of environment. So we have to take that in context. And I thought it was an important point to make, you know. So, I mean, again, I'm going to just make a comment on each of the people. Our director, Frank, and I think you really highlighted profitability is important. We saw all the things in terms of profitability. And the other thing is, the beef industry is so important to us from an agri-food economics point of view. So it's a really important industry. Profitability is important, and we have a fabulous product. And I mean, the more we learn about animal products versus other types of food products, the advantages are there in terms of, especially for the younger generation and the older generation. Mary, you're always upfront, Mary. You're always positive about climate change and what we need to do, and we're not changing that fast enough, and I agree with you. See the significant reduction in chemical nitrogen. Protected urea hasn't moved to the level we wanted it. Age of slaughter you highlighted, and the new technologies. And we need to work around that, and we need to take those impediments out in terms of achieving our. Ciaran, you highlighted the sustainability importance and the age of slaughter, and looking at the markets point of view, and looking at the importance of the UK market and the flat market in terms of Europe. But there are loads of other markets there. And you look at the dairy industry, they went outside of Europe. We look at South Korea, very valuable market going forward and really important. Donnacha and Eamonn, really impressed by you, because I think succession is really important for agri-food out there. It's a massive issue. And I'm really impressed how you work together. And of course, it's led by you, Eamonn, and it's really positive how you brought in, and you said you'd love to be working for another 20 to 30 years. But you saw the importance of what Donnacha was so important. So really important. And we need more examples of that. We need succession is really important for the agri. Ken, again, about your organic system, and really positive. And to me, we talk about diversification. It's probably the one diversification that has moved. The amount of farmers, I think, has increased by 3 times. The amount of land area has gone from, 2% to 5%. And you've capitalised on it. But the technologies are not any different. You talk about red and white clover, you talk about genetics, and you talk about the basic thing for beef farmers was fencing, really important. And Pat, what can I say? Talked about traceability. We saw the importance of that in the last number of weeks. And you talked about grass-fed beef and the importance of the product that we have. We have a fabulous product. We need to push on. We need to address the climate change, but we also need to develop the industry. Frank, you covered a lot of the issues of thanking Teagasc and thanking the people involved, and I think it's important, the likes of Paul Crossan, the amount of work you put into it, Pierce and Margaret, and all the people in Grange. And I know, from myself point of view of chairing the session before, the amount of work that goes into this is massive. And all my other colleagues from Teagasc that participate there, really important. So sponsors, FBD Trust, really important. And to you as dairy farmers or beef farmers, I know a lot of you are gone home at this stage. The day is not nowhere unless we have you in and our stakeholders. So all I can say is the best of luck in your future businesses. Thanks very much for the day and the best luck going forward. There you are.